So in page 43, I'm moving, yes. In page 43, the line 7 and 8, to insert the following. The Commission shall ensure the status as a trusted flagger is not awarded to an entity which is partisan and seeks to status as a trusted flagger as a means of controlling or influencing content. So central to my concerns with this bill and the concerns of many of the public is the phrase of who watches the watchers, taken in conjunction with Pontius Pilate's utterance, Que Veritas, what is truth? Ever since 2016, the online spaces of social media have been plagued with the ambiguous fact-checkers, individuals and bodies which often by some unknown mechanism are granted the power to remove or suppress content which is deemed as untrue or partially untrue. Obviously, the abuse of this power become widespread almost immediately as partisan, ideological charges, moderators crack down on anything that challenges their worldview or painted their opponents in a favourable light. Mark Zuckerberg famously once told the US Congress that these fact-checkers were simply opinions given by individuals or bodies, so as to not have Facebook be liable as a publisher. And so the moniker of fact-checking has now become a running joke online, synonymous with merely an alternative opinion lending undue weight. So now, of course, that the fact-checking frenzy has died down and largely gone away, Ireland wants to introduce them on a statutory basis and give more power than ever before, because we're always 5 years late, and seems to exclusively adopt policies that other countries are abandoning after seeing that they don't work. And so this amendment, as well as amendments 28 and 32, seek to limit the damage that these trusted flaggers will be able to do when inevitably this status is awarded to bodies which is pursuing a particular agenda, which they will do, especially on social issues. Amendment 28, in page 40, between the lines 16 and 17, to insert the following. The Commission shall establish a database of trusted flaggers, including aggregate details of complainants, including unsuccessful complaints, to be published publicly on a yearly basis. So very simply, we need to know who these flaggers are. The people have had enough of faceless bureaucrats working behind the scenes. If they're to have the power, they must also take the responsibility, and these complaints process will allow the public to make an infrared decision with the effectiveness of the trusted flaggers. 32, is 32 with this? Yeah, it is 32 in lines 40 and line, I don't know why I have glasses, because I actually have to look very close to the screen all the time. In page 40, between 35 and 34, 35, to insert the following. The Commission shall establish a mechanism for third parties to lodge complaints regarding the actions and workings of trusted flaggers. And in page 40, that's it.
Respond at the end. Okay.
Something, a point of order just on something that Senator Byrne made out. I have said nowhere, and you can see it on my amendments, that they shall ensure the status as a trusted flagger is not awarded to an entity which is partisan and seeks the status as a trusted flagger as a means of controlling or influencing content. So I agree that they should be there, but I don't believe that somebody has to oversee who these trusted flaggers are. You have to have a mechanism of checking them as well. I mean, if you look, let's look at some of the NGOs at this moment in time. Let's just take a look at the NGOs at this moment in time, because it's later down. But sorry, on a point of order, just
what the legislation provides. Senator Keogan, without interruption.
But let's just look at the NGOs at this moment in time. The government obviously supports a lot of the NGOs in this country, and particularly with the referendum at this moment in time as well. You have NGOs out there that are 96% funded. The NWC, the National Women's Council of Ireland, are 96% funded by this government. They're out there doing the bidding of the government. They're out there doing the bidding.
That's not a point of order. With respect, Senator, it's not a point of order.
Are they to be trusted with legislation?
If you want to speak to the amendment, if you want to speak to the amendment,
they are spreading misinformation and disinformation in relation to the referendum.
Minister to respond.
Sorry, Chair, just to say that really wouldn't be the practice that there would be allegations made against organisations, especially when they're not present. Just to mention that that's.
Everything that I've said here is factually true.
Thank you, Senator. Minister to respond.
Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. I might just speak to the actual amendments, if that's okay. So amendments 27 to 34 inclusive are grouped together because they all relate to trusted flaggers. Amendment 27, as proposed by Senator Keogan, requires additional provision in the bill stating that Commission Amman will ensure that the status of a trusted flagger is not awarded to an entity that is partisan and that seeks to use its status to control or influence content. I think in the context of this discussion, and we've had very good discussion at committee and in the Dáil around this, it may be useful to outline some important details about the Trusted Flagger framework, including the application, conditions, transparency provisions and the route of the DSC. And just for the senators that are here, I did say to Senator Ruan earlier, my officials, Senator Higgins-Vicker, I want to acknowledge the engagement of the CEG in the bill, are available to walk you through the process of the bill. I do apologise, I will speak to it later for the rushing this evening, but we will walk you through the process in advance of regulations, so that I just want to reiterate that, Chairman. A core objective of the EU Digital Services Regulation is to expedite the removal of illegal content from online services. One mechanism for facilitating this is the framework for trusted flaggers established by the regulation. Providers of online services are obliged to prioritise notices submitted by trusted flaggers about the presence on their service of specific items of information that the trusted flagger considers to be illegal content. The priority content for trusted flaggers does not allow trusted flaggers to require the provider to automatically remove content. It means that the provider must give priority to the reviewing of notices submitted by trusted flaggers over other notices submitted to them. The Digital Services Bill simply sets out the steps in relation to the application process to Commission Amman for trusted flagger status. The bill does not provide for Commission Amman to apply specific criteria for determining who or what may or may not be awarded trusted flagger status. That is because such criteria is defined in the Digital Services Regulation, and whether an applicant is or is not granted a designation as a trusted flagger is dependent on them meeting the set of conditions as defined in the regulation. The regulation provides for the DSC to award the status of trusted flagger to entities that satisfy three conditions. It must have particular expertise and competence for the purposes of detecting, identifying and notifying illegal content. It must be independent from any provider of online platforms, and it must carry out its activities for the purposes of submitting notices diligently, accurately and objectively. Ireland does not have scope to amend this set of conditions. The EU regulation has direct effect in this regard, and digital services coordinators in each member state have to use the same set of conditions in assessing whether an applicant is to be designated as a trusted flagger. Trusted flaggers can be public in nature, such as for terrorist content, law enforcement authorities, or they can be non-governmental organisations, private or semi-public bodies, such as organisations dedicating to reporting child sexual abuse material or illegal racist content. However, the trusted flagger is not the arbitrator of illegal content. The trusted flagger simply notifies the providers when they consider that there is illegal content on the provider's platform and must, in the notice, provide a sufficiently substantiated explanation of the reasons why the trusted flagger alleges the information in question to be illegal content. The providers are obliged to come to a decision in a diligent and non-arbitrary manner on whether content flagged by a trusted flagger is illegal. Again, the decision by the providers is focused on whether the content is illegal, not on content that people may have a political difficulty with or a values difficulty with. It is a matter of illegal content. In relation to Senator Higgins' Amendments 28 and Amendment 31, both of which seek to require Commission Amman to publish a database of trusted flaggers, it is already the case that the DSC must provide the European Commission with the details of entities that they have awarded trusted flagger status to. They must also provide information about those trusted flaggers whose status has either been suspended or revoked. The European Commission then must publish that information in a public database. And I think, to your point about patterns, I think when it's published on an EU-wide basis, it will be much easier to identify such patterns. Amendments 29 and 30 both refer to inserting a provision for Commission Oman to conduct a review of the status of any trusted flagger, either as part of a systematic process of reviewing the notices submitted by trusted flaggers, which is Amendment 29, or on their own initiative or based on information from a third party, which is Amendment 30. It is already provided for that Commission Oman if Commission Oman has reason to suspect that there is misuse of the status based on information from a provider or a third party, it can investigate the entity concerned. The trusted flagger status is suspended during that investigation. I do not consider that the amendments provide any additional opportunity to review the activities of trusted flaggers that is not already in place in the Digital Services Regulation framework and the bill. Amendment 33 seeks to extend the number of days to request a review of a refusal or revocation of status of trusted flagger from 14 to 28 days. As I previously outlined in relation to the review for vetted researchers, as proposed by Senator Byrne, this 14-day period is considered fair and proportionate. It is, in my view, enough time for the applicant to have received the notice of refusal or revocation, whilst ensuring that the administrative processes in Commission Oman can be carried out efficiently. In relation to Amendment 32 and 34, Article 22(7) of the Digital Services Regulation provides that third parties can complain about trusted flaggers. It states that the DSC that awarded the status of trusted flagger to an entity will revoke the status if it determines, following an investigation either on its own initiative or on the basis of information received from third parties, including the information provided by a provider of online platforms, that the entity no longer meets the conditions set out in paragraph 2 of that article. One of those conditions is that it carries out its activities for the purposes of submitting notices diligently, accurately and objectively. As I've just outlined, and I apologise, Gerda, for the detail here, the conditions to be awarded trusted flagger status, combined with the reporting and transparency provisions around their activity on an EU-wide level, are in place to ensure that they can act in a competent and objective manner. Commission Oman can investigate the trusted flagger on its own initiative or based on information received from third parties. All in all, I consider this to be a robust framework that supports the trusted flagger mechanism in achieving the objective of the Digital Services Regulation in locating and removing illegal, and I stress the word illegal, content online.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Keogan.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your reply there and the issue in relation to how the status can be revoked. But this piece of legislation has massive implications EU-wide, massive when it comes to hate speech. And because illegal content does actually include hate speech as defined by the EU. Yeah, so it's not just for people on the left or on people on the right, but even post-Palestinian or progressive views would actually find themselves on the wrong side of this particular legislation. So you do need checks and balances. This legislation has flown through, it's going to fly through both houses with very, very little scrutiny. But, you know, when we in this country haven't even defined what hate is, when some people can't even define what a woman is, and here we have a piece of legislation that can cause massive implications down the road for people to be banned off social media. I think it's a sad day for democracy.
I think just to come back to Senator Keogan's overall points, this bill doesn't define hate speech. This bill is a very technical bill, you know, and also in relation to content moderation. You know, in relation to content moderation, the DSA seeks to define the rules on content moderation by providers, and there are two sides, at least two sides to that particular coin, potentially more. The DSA defines the circumstances under which providers should moderate content and the consequences of moderating or not moderating content as required. The DSA also provides, Senator Keogan, for the rights of users when their content is moderated. So there is provision in that space. Online platforms that do not comply with these rules may face implications with respect to criminal or civil liability for distributing others' illegal content. Furthermore, they may face administrative penalties imposed on them by the DSC if establishment. The DSA introduces two instruments to safeguard against providers taking decisions arbitrarily on content moderation. Article 14 of the DSA sets out the terms and conditions of the service that must be clear and easily accessible, and they must inform users about the procedures for content moderating. Online intermediaries are required to exercise due diligence, objectivity and proportionality when moderating content, taking into account the fundamental rights and interests of the parties concerned. For content moderation decisions, platforms must now provide, Senator, obligatory information to users if their content gets removed or restricted. So that will be upfront and available to everybody. In relation to the contest of decisions, recipients of services will be able to easily and effectively contest decisions of providers of online platforms concerning the illegality of content or its incompatibility with terms and conditions that negatively affect them. Providers of online platforms are required to provide for internal complaint handling systems which meet certain conditions that aim to ensure that systems are easily accessible and leads to fast, non-discriminatory, non-arbitrary and fair outcomes, and they are subject to human review where automatic means are used. The DSA provides that and requires that providers of intermediary services must publish reports at least once a year on content moderation that it's engaged in during that time period. So that will meet, unusually enough, both your aims in terms of transparency around this. Those reports must include the number of notices submitted under the notice and action mechanism, categorised by the type of alleged illegal content, the number of notices submitted by trusted flaggers, and any action taken due to the notice, and any use of automated means for content moderation. So the DSA rules for trusted flaggers, and indeed all users reporting such content, impose measures to remove or encourage the removal of illegal content in respect of the freedom of expression. So again, it speaks, Senators, to what I feel are very robust checks and balances that address the concerns, albeit different concerns, expressed by both of you.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Keogan.
Thank you very much. And look, I think you were sort of doing a little dance around what I basically said. But, you know, the Digital Services Act doesn't define hate speech. It doesn't. But this bill, in conjunction with the hate speech bill and the EU hate speech bill, is very dangerous and has implications worldwide, but particularly for people in Ireland, particularly for people in the EU. So I just want to make that point.
Maybe just, you know, again, I want to, this bill, while the DSA, this is the DSA, this puts in the DSR into effect. We were able to use the provisions of the Digital Service Regulation on the night of the Dublin riots to alert providers and online providers to stuff that was appearing on their platforms, encouraging people to come and destroy people's property, potentially people's lives. I think that's a huge benefit. And if it can be used in terms of public security and public protection in that manner, in the way that it was, it shows the very positive potential of the bill in this way as well. And I'm very conscious of your concerns, Senator, and I've tried to show that there are a lot of safeguards in place that reflect those.